Oh, you're here. Good. I've got another betrayal story for you. Sit down. One day, my world cracked in half. Lena smirked at me and said the words that still echo in my chest. Your brother treats me better. And when I turned to Mark, I saw his face drain pale. That was the moment everything I thought I knew about love and family turned into a lie. My name's David. I'm 29. I run a small repair business, and I thought I was building a life worth something. I'd been with Lena for 4 years. She was sharp, ambitious, always pushing me to do better. We weren't rich, not by a long shot. Some months, bills stacked up higher than I could handle. That's when Mark, my older brother, stepped in. He was the one I trusted most. When I got behind on rent, he covered it once. When I needed a truck for my tools, he co-signed. He was more than a brother. He was my safety net. That night wasn't supposed to be anything big. Just the three of us in my apartment, sharing takeout and beer, talking about nothing. The kind of night where the TV hums low in the background and laughter fills the spaces. At least, that's how it started. Lena leaned back on the couch, one hand wrapped around her glass, and out of nowhere, she dropped a grenade. Your brother treats me better. Her voice carried this smug little curl, like she knew exactly how deep it would cut. The words hit me sideways. I blinked, waiting for the punchline, but she didn't laugh. She just looked straight at me, eyes gleaming like she wanted me to squirm. And Mark? His reaction told me everything. He froze, shoulders locked, and then his face lost all color. It wasn't shock, not the kind you feel when someone tells a sick joke. No, it was guilt. A guilt so heavy it made his jaw twitch. I laughed it off at first, forcing it, trying to keep the air light. Yeah, sure, I said, waving a hand. Mark's always been the favorite. I expected him to jump in, tease back, something to balance it out. But he didn't. He just stared at the floor, like a man caught with a smoking gun. The silence that followed burned hotter than any argument. Lena smirked again, satisfied, and turned back to sipping her drink. We finished the evening like zombies, moving through the motions. I cracked jokes that no one laughed at. Mark left early, mumbling something about work in the morning. Lena slipped into bed next to me later that night, scrolling her phone like nothing happened. But for me, there was no sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, the words circling in my head like vultures. Your brother treats me better. The way she said it, not playful, not accidental, intentional, deliberate, a line meant to wound. And Mark's face, I couldn't shake it. He'd gone pale, his lips parted like he wanted to speak, but couldn't. That wasn't the face of a man blindsided by a joke. That was the face of someone caught in the act, too ashamed to defend himself. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together. Not in my living room, but somewhere else. A hotel. A car was parked too long outside a diner. Shadows moving where they shouldn't be. My chest tightened with every image I couldn't prove but couldn't ignore. I kept telling myself I was overthinking. That Lena was being cruel, not honest. That Mark was just tired, maybe embarrassed by her comment. I tried to build excuses for both of them, brick by brick, but every excuse felt thinner than the last. Around 3 a.m, I rolled onto my side and looked at Lena. Her phone screen lit her face faintly blue. She was smiling at something, thumbs tapping quickly. She didn't notice me watching. She never did. The seed was planted, and there was no pulling it out. Suspicion had taken root, and I knew it was only a matter of time before it grew into something I couldn't control. The worst part wasn't betrayal itself. Not yet. It was the waiting. Not knowing if the life I'd built was already a ruin. I was too blind to see. I closed my eyes again, but sleep never came. All I could hear was her voice, echoing in the dark. Your brother treats me better. The next morning, I tried to pretend nothing had happened. But once you hear poison, you can't unhear it. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. Lena was still asleep when I got up. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the steam rising from my mug. Normally, mornings were my favorite. The quiet before phones started buzzing with work calls, before life demanded everything from me. But that morning, the silence was heavy. Her words from the night before rang louder than any alarm clock. I told myself to shake it off, to not let one comment spin me out. But the truth is, I was already spinning. Later that day, I was searching through the kitchen drawers for a pen when I spotted her purse half open on the counter. I wasn't snooping, not at first. I just went to grab a pen from her organizer pouch. That's when I saw them. Receipts, folded neatly in the side pocket. 2 steakhouse dinners. 1 Italian place across town I hadn't been to in months. The dates hit me first, nights when she said she was working late or out with a friend. I stood there frozen, the paper crinkling between my fingers. Maybe she went with co-workers. I told myself, maybe with a girlfriend. But the receipts didn't list 2 glasses of wine. They listed bottles. Entrees for 2. Desserts are split down the middle. The kind of thing couples order. I shoved the papers back into her purse and closed it, my heart pounding like I just committed a crime. I felt guilty even though I hadn't done anything wrong. That's how betrayal works. It twists you until you feel like you're the one sneaking around. That night, I tried to push the thought aside. We sat on the couch watching some dumb reality show, her feet curled under her, phone in hand. I laughed at the screen when I was supposed to, but my eyes kept drifting to her. She was right there beside me, and yet miles away. A few days later, Mark and I were catching up over coffee. It was supposed to be normal, brother time, like always. He was rambling about his work, some project he'd been stressed over. When he mentioned the company had booked him a hotel one weekend for an out-of-town client, I nodded, pretending to listen, but my stomach tightened. That same weekend, Lena had told me she was visiting her sister. I didn't say anything right then. I just kept sipping my coffee, nodding along, while my brain replayed both excuses side by side. Out-of-town client, visiting her sister, same weekend, same cover story. When I got home, I felt like the walls were closing in. The apartment we shared suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. I paced the living room, running through timelines, trying to convince myself I was wrong. And then came the knife twist. I was digging through my dresser one morning, searching for a cufflink, when I noticed something else was missing. My dad's old watch. Gold band, scratch face, nothing fancy but priceless to me. I tore the drawers apart, convinced I'd misplaced it. But it wasn't there. A week later, at another family get-together, I saw it. On Mark's wrist. He tried to keep his jacket sleeve tugged down, but when he reached for his drink, there it was, unmistakable. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to call him out right then, demand to know why he had it. But my mother was in the room, laughing with Lena. The weight of family eyes held me down like chains. I clenched my fists on the table and said nothing. The ride home with Lena was quiet. She scrolled her phone while I drove, the glow of the screen lighting her face. Finally, I asked, "You've been staying late a lot lately. Everything okay?" She didn't even look up. Work's work. You know how it is. Right. I muttered. Just seems like a lot. That made her glance over, finally. Her eyes narrowed just slightly, like I stepped out of line. "David, don't start." 2 words. Dismissive. Sharp. It felt like a door slamming shut. I wanted to push, to demand answers. But the truth is, I was scared of what I might hear. So I let the silence swallow us for the rest of the drive home. That night, I sat at the kitchen table long after she went to bed. Receipts. Hotel weekends. My father's watch on Mark's wrist. All of it stacked up in my head like evidence at a trial I hadn't agreed to. I told myself maybe I was paranoid. Maybe Lena bought those dinners for clients. Maybe Mark borrowed the watch and forgot to mention it. Maybe. But deep down, I already knew. When you've known someone your whole life, you recognize their tells. And Mark's pale face that night, it wasn't a look of surprise. It was the look of a man caught in a lie. I sat there in the dark kitchen, gripping my coffee mug until my knuckles turned white, and I felt it. That line between denial and certainty snapping inside me. This wasn't paranoia anymore. It was a pattern that pointed in one direction, no matter how much I wanted to look away. The seed of suspicion had sprouted, and now it was growing wild, wrapping around everything I thought I could trust. And for the first time in my life, I realized my brother might not just be my blood. He might be my enemy. By the end of that week, my silence had turned into distance. And distance is loud, especially around family. When I walked into my parents' house that Sunday, I felt the air shift the second Lena and I stepped through the door. My mother was already fussing with the roast in the kitchen, calling out cheerful greetings. My father sat in his usual chair, glasses perched low as he read the paper. Claire was setting the table, chatting easily with Mark, who was leaning against the counter, beer in hand. To anyone else, it looked normal. To me, it looked staged. Mark's laugh came too quickly, too forced. Lena slid her arm through mine a little tighter than usual, as if holding me in place. And me? I couldn't shake the image of that watch flashing on Mark's wrist a week before. Dinner started the way it always did. Small talk about work, the weather, and my mother trying to get everyone to compliment her cooking before we even took a bite. But under the clinking silverware and polite chatter, tension crackled like a live wire. Claire noticed first. She always did. My cousin had a radar for discomfort, the kind that could sniff out a secret before it had a chance to settle. She kept glancing between me, Lena, and Mark, her forked paws halfway to her mouth. Finally, she set it down with a soft clink and leaned back. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice casual but her eyes sharp. Mark coughed into his drink. Lena smiled too brightly. "Nothing, why?" she said, almost sing-song, as if that would erase the stiffness hanging over the table. Claire didn't buy it. She never did. "David?" she pressed, tilting her head at me. "You've been quiet all night. Quieter than usual." I forced a smile, stabbing at my food. Just tired. Long week. But the look she gave me said she wasn't letting it go. Dinner carried on, but I'd barely tasted anything. My father made a comment about business being slow in town. Mark jumped in with some story about a new client. My mother fussed about Claire's dating life. It all washed over me like static. I felt trapped between Lena's smile on one side and Mark's silence on the other. When it was over and people started drifting to the living room for coffee, Claire caught my arm. "Walk me out?" she asked. It wasn't a request. Outside, the cool night air felt like a slap. We stopped by her car and she crossed her arms, pinning me with that look she inherited from her mother, the one that cut through excuses like glass. "Talk," she said. "There's nothing to—" I started, but she cut me off. "Bullshit. I know you, David. You got that storm brewing face. You've been dodging eye contact all night, and Lena's smile looks like she's auditioning for a toothpaste commercial. Spill it." I hesitated, staring at the gravel under my shoes. My gut screamed to keep it in, to hold the shame close. But something in her stare broke me. Something's going on," I muttered. "Lena and Mark." Claire blinked. "What do you mean, something?" I swallowed hard. Receipts for dinners. A hotel charge. Dad's watch. Gone, and then suddenly on Mark's wrist. And the way he reacted when she said, my throat tightened when she said, "He treats her better." Her face shifted from confusion to shock, then to fury. "Are you kidding me?" she snapped. "Mark? Your own brother?" I nodded once, shame burning hot in my chest. Claire slammed her car door shut without even getting in. "I'm not sitting on this," she said, fire blazing in her eyes. "They don't get to do this to you. To the family." "Claire," I tried to stop her, but it was too late. The next day, the wildfire spread. My mother called me in tears, begging me to tell her it wasn't true. "David, please," she whispered over the phone. Don't ruin things between you and your brother. Families survive worse. You can't let this destroy us. I wanted to scream that I wasn't the one doing the destroying, but the words stuck in my throat. She didn't want the truth. She wanted peace. Peace at any cost. That evening, my father showed up at my place unannounced. He didn't sit down, didn't even take off his coat. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, jaw set like stone. Is it true? He asked. No greeting, no soft landing. I nodded. I think so. I don't have every detail, but enough, he cut me off. His voice was low, dangerous. I don't care about details. If your brother crossed that line, he'll answer for it. The next family dinner didn't wait for Sunday. My father called one himself. Lena tried to wiggle out of it, but he insisted, and when everyone sat around that same table again, the atmosphere was different. He fixed his gaze on Mark like a hawk. Look me in the eye, my father said. Tell me you haven't betrayed your brother. The silence that followed was unbearable. Mark fidgeted, avoiding his stare. My mother's hands shook as she clasped them together. Lena looked down at her lap, lips pressed tight, and right there, in that silence, the cracks turned into fractures. Whatever glue had held our family together was dissolving, and we all knew it. The emotional betrayal was enough to wreck me, but what I found next made it a war. After that dinner, after my father's pointed questions and Mark's silence, I couldn't look at either of them the same way. The air between us was scorched, and I knew there was no going back. But betrayal doesn't just come in whispers and glances. Sometimes it leaves a paper trail. I ran my own repair business. Small, nothing glamorous, but it kept me afloat. Mark had helped me set up some of the accounts back when I first got started. He'd handled spreadsheets better than I did. So I let him in, trusted him to watch my blind spots. Stupid move. One night, after Lena had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, sifting through invoices. I wasn't looking for trouble. I just want to keep my mind busy. But trouble found me anyway. There were charges that didn't add up, payments transferred out of the business account. Small at first, then larger. Each one was tucked under vague labels, miscellaneous, vendor fees. Things I would have glossed over if I hadn't already been suspicious. I pulled every statement from the last 6 months. The more I read, the more my chest tightened. Names and codes blurred together until one detail snapped me into focus. An account number I didn't recognize, but one that appeared again and again. And next to it, Lena's name. I froze. My hand hovered over the trackpad, my stomach dropping like an elevator cut loose. She wasn't just tied to me through rent and loans. She was tied to the business, to the money that was supposed to keep my head above water. And Mark's login had authorized half of it. I leaned back in my chair, the screen glowing in the dark. It hit me all at once. They weren't just sneaking around behind my back. They were building something. Together. A future funded by the hours I put in, the sweat on my back, the risk I carried. Every late night, she brushed me off. Every hotel weekend, he worked. It's all connected. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was strategic, calculated. They weren't just sharing a bed. They were laying bricks for a life without me. The weight of it crushed me. My business wasn't much, but it was mine. My blood, my father's watchful advice, my brother's early encouragement, all of it twisted now into a weapon used against me. I dropped my head into my hands, breathing hard. Losing Lena was one thing. Losing Mark cut deeper. But losing the very thing I'd built with my own 2 hands? That nearly broke me. The next day, I told Claire. We met at a diner off the highway, one of those places with cracked vinyl booths and burnt coffee. She listened while I laid it all out, receipts spread across the table like evidence in a courtroom. When I finished, her jaw was tight, eyes blazing. They're not just screwing around, she said. They're screwing you over. I nodded. I don't know what to do. If I call them out, I lose everything. If I don't, you already are, she cut in. "They're bleeding you dry. David, you can't keep pretending this will go away. You need to confront them with this." She tapped the stack of papers between us. I stared at the pile. Proof. Cold, undeniable proof. The kind that stripped away excuses, left nothing but raw truth. The thought of facing them, of hearing their voices twist explanations into knives, made me sick. But Claire was right. I couldn't keep hiding behind silence. I folded the papers back into the envelope, my hands trembling. "Okay," I whispered. "No more hiding." For the first time since it started, I felt a flicker of control, like maybe the fire could burn their lives down instead of me. But even as I said it, I knew confronting them wouldn't give me closure. It would just show me how much more I stood to lose. I didn't plan a dramatic showdown. I just needed answers. What I got instead was worse than silence. It happened on a Wednesday night, the kind of night where nothing special was supposed to happen. I'd finished work, showered, and sat at the kitchen table with that thick envelope of proof Claire had insisted I carry. I stared at it for an hour, maybe more. The papers inside felt like dynamite, heavy, dangerous, but useless unless I lit the fuse. When Lena walked in, humming some song under her breath, I felt the fuse spark on its own. She tossed her keys in the bowl, slipped off her coat, and smiled like everything was normal. That smile made my stomach turn. "Where were you?" I asked, voice low. She said, shrugging. "Why?" I slid the envelope across the table. She glanced at it, then at me, then slowly pulled out the papers. Receipts, transfers, account numbers, her name, Mark's login, every ugly truth in black and white. Her smirk returned. She didn't flinch, didn't gasp, didn't even try to deny it. She leaned against the counter and said, "Finally!" "Took you long enough." The words landed harder than any slap. I stood, hands clenched. "How long?" I asked. She tilted her head. "Does it matter? You were too busy drowning in bills and self-pity to notice. Mark." Her lips curled into something cruel. "Mark treats me better. He sees my worth." The room spun. My ears rang. She didn't just admit it. She reveled in it. The front door opened then, and Mark stepped in like the universe wanted to twist a knife deeper. He froze when he saw me. Then Lena. Then the papers spread across the counter. "David," he started, voice small, pathetic. "Don't." I snapped. My chest heaved with every breath. "How long have you been screwing me over?" "Huh? My business. My trust. My life. How long, Mark?" He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes glued to the floor. "It wasn't supposed to. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Didn't mean for it?" I barked. "You wore Dad's watch like a trophy, you coward." His head jerked up, shame painted across his face. But he said nothing, just swallowed, lips pressed tight. That silence killed me more than her cruelty. If he'd yelled, if he'd fought, I could have hated him cleanly. But his cowardice, his refusal to even own it, left me standing in the ruins of what used to be my family. Lena crossed her arms, her voice sharp. "Face it, David. You were never enough for me. You clung to me, to him, to anyone who'd prop you up. I was tired of waiting for you to grow up. Mark stepped in where you failed." Mark flinched, but didn't correct her, didn't defend me, didn't defend himself. I stared at both of them, the woman I thought I'd marry, the brother I thought I could trust, and I realized there was nothing left to salvage. "Enjoy each other," I said finally, my voice hollow, "because you're all you'll have left." I grabbed my jacket, shoved past Mark, and walked out. He didn't stop me. She didn't call after me. The night air hit me like ice, but it didn't numb the burn inside. I drove without a destination, the city lights blurring through my windshield. Every memory I had of family holidays, childhood laughter, Lena's promises, all of it went up in flames in my head. By the time I pulled back into my driveway hours later, I knew the truth. Those ties were cut forever. No amount of begging from my mother, No scolding from my father. No apologies from Mark, which stitched them back. Family gatherings? Gone. Birthdays, holidays, traditions? Gone. Even walking into my parents' house would feel like stepping onto a battlefield. I sat in my car, engine ticking, staring at the dark apartment window. I thought of Lena inside, probably pouring herself a glass of wine, like nothing happened. I thought of Mark, slinking home with his guilt, too spineless to even face what he'd done. And I knew I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't be the glue that kept breaking and breaking just to hold everyone else together. So I walked inside, grabbed a duffel bag, and started packing. Shirts, jeans, the bare essentials. My life in a bag. Lena stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching like it was a performance she'd already seen the ending to. "Running away?" she asked. "No," I said, zipping the bag shut. "I'm leaving you behind." Her smirk flickered then, just for a second, but I didn't care anymore. I carried the bag out the door, down the stairs, and into the night. I didn't look back. The chapter was closed. Not with closure, not with forgiveness, but with finality. I thought the fallout would crush me. Instead, it forced me to start over. Within a month of that night, I was gone. I didn't just pack a bag. I packed my life. Every tool from my shop, every piece of furniture worth keeping, I sold, stored, or left behind. People talk about fresh starts like they're easy, but the truth is, you have to burn the bridges first. Mine went up in flames the second I walked out of that apartment. I found a new place 3 hours away, a small city where nobody knew my name, where my brother wasn't lurking around every corner, and my ex-girlfriend Smirked didn't haunt every street. The first night in that new apartment, just a mattress on the floor, boxes stacked like walls around me. I lay there listening to the quiet. No Lena, no family arguments. Just the silence. For the first time in months, it felt like a gift. Starting over meant finding work fast. My old business was poisoned with too many memories, too many loose ends tied to Mark. So I found something else. A job at a repair shop downtown. The kind of place where grease stains your hands before noon, and the air smells like motor oil. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Honest work, clean slate. Funny thing about work, when you strip away the drama, the lies, the betrayals, it can actually feel good again. Every day I showed up, I felt stronger. Every paycheck was proof I could stand on my own 2 feet without Mark's so-called help. Slowly, the anger started to fade, not because I forgave them, but because they weren't worth carrying anymore. And then came Anna. She wasn't some grand entrance or movie moment. I met her at the shop. She came in with her car, rattling like it was ready to fall apart. Most customers complain, argue over prices, and try to haggle down. Not Anna. She laughed about the whole thing. Said her car had been on its last prayer for months. Her honesty disarmed me. One appointment turned into a conversation. The conversation turned into coffee. Coffee turned into dinners. And before I knew it, she was part of my life. No smirks, no hidden edges, no games. Just real. Being with her felt different. With Lena, I was always bracing myself, like waiting for a storm. With Anna, it was calm, steady. I could breathe around her. And that was enough to remind me what I actually wanted in life. Within a year, we got married. Small ceremony. Nothing flashy, just a handful of friends, a courthouse, and a night spent laughing instead of pretending. I didn't invite my family. Not because I hated them, but because I no longer needed them. That chapter was gone, sealed shut. A few months later, Anna told me she was pregnant. I remember the moment clear as day. She handed me the test, her hand shaking, eyes wide with both fear and excitement. I just pulled her close and held her, because for the first time in so long, my future wasn't about what I'd lost. It was about what I was about to gain. When our daughter was born, I stood in that hospital room with tears streaming down my face, holding her tiny hand in mine, and I realized something. I wasn't broken anymore. The betrayal that once felt like the end of my world had pushed me straight into the life I was meant to live. I didn't think about Lena. I didn't think about Mark. They could have each other, or they could fall apart. I didn't care. My life wasn't theirs to ruin anymore. Every holiday, every birthday, every quiet evening at home with Anna and our daughter reminded me the worst betrayal I ever endured was the very thing that freed me. I'd lost a brother. I'd lost a girlfriend. But I gained a family worth everything. And in the end, that was the real victory. Hey, what would you have done if your own brother and partner were scheming behind your back? Would you have walked away clean like I did, or gone after revenge? Let me know your take in the comments. And if you want more wild betrayals like this one, don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story.